Whether you're a diehard sports fan, a hopeless romantic, or a comedy aficionado, the Xfinity 10G network was made for streaming it all. Worry less about buffering when streaming your favorite shows, movies, or live sports, and enjoy a better way to watch. Xfinity gives you a reliable connection for streaming, plus all the entertainment you love all in one place. Fear not, because now you can finally sit back, relax, and stream your favorite entertainment and sports like never before with the Xfinity 10G network.
This episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by the boys of Byrd Campbell. With offices in Texas and Florida, Byrd Campbell are there for all your Dukie law needs. Reach out to them at byrdcampbell.com. Duke fans, it's been a little while, but we are back at it to talk about Dukies in the NBA and new kids coming to Duke and all kinds of other interesting stuff going on for your Duke basketball summer needs. It is the Duke Basketball Report podcast. This is episode number 119 of them here. I'm your host this week. My name, as always, is Jason Evans. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you out there in podcast land. And as always, I am joined by my two compadres, my partners in crime, Donald Wine. Donald, where are you recording today?
I'm recording, as always, or not always, but most of the time, from my couch here in Washington, D.C. And Jason, I got to tell you, yesterday, I got to tell everyone out there, yesterday I watched 5 movies from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and holy crap, I ended up seeing Infinity War, just like you asked me to, and I have feelings. I have a lot of feelings.
You have a lot of yes. Infinity War will engender feelings. You saw 5 movies in one day. 5 more. Which Marvel movies did you see?
So I'd seen a few up to this point, but yesterday I saw Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Captain America: Winter Soldier, Avengers: Age of Ultron, and then watched Captain America: Civil War, and literally finished that while on my phone in line at the concession stand at the movie theater waiting to see Infinity War. Literally right up to the last minute, I was knee deep into the MCU, ready to get ready for Infinity War, and it did not disappoint. Everyone that was talking about it and was trying to hold back spoilers, I hate all y'all because they took my mans. They took a lot of my mans, and Thanos needs to go.
So wait, had you not been spoiled? You didn't know what was going to happen?
No, the tremendous thing is I'd heard bits and pieces about little things and some of the memes that have gone up in social media. Like, obviously, I knew that was from the movie, but I had not heard anything about the specific plot or, like, you know, what happens in the end, anything like that, which is, you know, shout out to my friends, every one of you that watched the movie and did not spoil it for me. I appreciate you.
Wow. I can't believe you avoided spoilers. It's been out for like 4 weeks now. I mean,
yeah,
you know, the snap is not, I'm just shocked that you were able to avoid that, but let's move on. This is the Duke Basketball Report podcast, not the Duke Movie Report podcast. So let's move. Sam Klein, I asked Donald where he is. Where are you today?
I am sitting on Donald Wine's couch in his apartment in Washington, D.C. So, I'm right here next to him. It's we've done this a couple times now, so we're pretty good at it, and it's great to be here. I haven't seen a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie in, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. So I don't have any of the spoilers because if I had encountered them, it wouldn't even have occurred to me that I was encountering spoilers. I recognize many of the characters, but more than that, I'm pretty out of the loop on that world. So I don't know. Do you guys want to talk about basketball?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think maybe we should transition to the reason that we're here, the reason that people listen in, if there's anyone listening in over the summer. I don't know. Actually, our summer numbers are usually pretty good in terms of people listening. So we will move to basketball, and folks, we're gonna get to some stuff related to the Duke basketball team, next year's team, in just a little bit. But we're going to start by focusing on the players that we loved when they were in a Duke uniform, and we still love them after they're in a Duke uniform, the guys who are either in the NBA or heading to the NBA. And we're going to start with the guys who are in the NBA, Dukies in the NBA right now, because there are several interesting storylines involving Duke basketball players and the NBA playoffs, and specifically what's been going on in recent rounds of the NBA playoffs. And I want to start with the guy who is really making jaws drop, and that is Jayson Tatum, who has had one of the best playoff runs by a rookie that we've seen in many, many years. And he's really been the go-to guy for the Boston Celtics. The Celtics, as we record this, by the time you listen to this, the game 3 of the Celtics-Cleveland series will probably have happened. But at this moment, as we record, the Celtics lead Cleveland 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals. A lot of why the Celtics are even in the Eastern Conference Finals is because Jayson Tatum absolutely dismantled the Philadelphia 76ers. He was almost unquestionably the best player in that series against the Sixers. There were some incredible stats about his scoring. Tatum, I believe, scored 20 plus points. I want to say it was in 7 consecutive playoff games, might have been 8 consecutive playoff games. He was setting and breaking records that go back to Boston players like Larry Bird. And anytime you are mentioned in the same sentence with Larry Bird, Sam, I know you're too young probably to remember Larry Bird, but
he was the golfing buddy in Space Jam, right?
Yes, that's how you would recall Larry Bird. He was a fairly decent basketball player also, and Jayson Tatum is doing the kind of things we haven't seen by a young Celtic player since Larry Bird, which is truly amazing. Hey, Sam, let me go to you first. Let's just talk about Tatum for a moment. Have you watched some of these games? Give me a little bit of your impressions. Give me some of your surprise at what Tatum's doing, maybe relative to what he did when he was at Duke.
Well, just to follow up on your discussion of Tatum doing things that we haven't seen in a long time, I was reading a few of the articles this morning about his performance so far, and per the Boston Globe, only Kobe Bryant, Tony Parker, and Magic Johnson have logged more postseason points through the age that Tatum's at than Tatum has. So obviously,
hey, wait, give me that list again. That's a great
Kobe
list.
Bryant, Tony Parker, and Magic Johnson. Now, I guess Magic Johnson must have come out early, or because Tatum is still pretty young. He's only 20 years old. But yeah, that's a pretty short list. Obviously, it's affected by the fact that until only about 25 years ago, most guys stayed 4 years in college. So most guys were not Tatum's age in the playoffs, but we have seen a lot of impact players come right out of high school or out of 1 or 2 years of college who are around Tatum's age, who have made a great impact in their first or second years in the playoffs. So Tatum is on a short list of some really excellent players. Just to kind of finish that off, I have watched a little bit of the Celtics, and what impressed me last year about Tatum was how fluid his game was transitioning to the college level. I think that we see a lot, even of the one and done players, a lot of them come in and they get off to kind of shaky starts, or they'll have games where it looks like they're totally lost. I thought for the most part last year, Jayson Tatum looked like he was in the rhythm of the game. He didn't slow down at the end of the season. He was good, I think, all the way through. And there's an expectation then that when they jump from the 30-ish, 35 game schedule of college to the 80 plus game schedule of the NBA, and then in Tatum's case, having played an additional 15 games already in the playoffs, that they're going to slow down there. He doesn't look like he's slowing down at all. He looks like he's totally in rhythm with the game. His defense looks really good. Seems like he has adapted to playing that fast NBA defense the way that Brad Stevens wants him to play, and that it hasn't affected his scoring ability. That none of the things we saw from him last year have deteriorated with the increased level of play. So I think it's all around game for him, and also that he's fit into this new team so well. The Celtics, among the teams that are left, are probably the least definitely the least star-studded of the Final Four, right? Because you have Houston that has Chris Paul and James Harden, Golden State that has basically everybody's a star, and LeBron James and the rest of the guys that he plays with, whatever their names are, and meanwhile you have Jayson Tatum as the leading scorer in the playoffs for the Boston Celtics, and I don't know if he's an NBA star yet. He's probably on his way there, but the rest of the team is made up of what I would think, and this isn't not supposed to be an insult to them, but really good role players, and they're all playing well together. Brad Stevens has gotten a lot of praise for the coaching that he's done on this team, and I'm really impressed by the way that Tatum has kind of taken the reins for them without really, taking over the team, because I think that would be an uncomfortable situation for a rookie to be in.
Well, I think a lot of people look at the Celtics. First of all, I would say Al Horford is not a role. Al Horford, is a guy who's a multi-year NBA All-Star. Not a great player, certainly not. Your comparison to the other teams that all have guys who are all NBA. Horford is not an all NBA kind of performer, but I mean he's
been an all-star.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. But your larger point is really correct, and yeah, everyone talks about Brad Stevens and the job he's doing with the Celtics. I would say that my bet is when we look back in 4 or 5 years, we will look at the Celtics team and go, oh, those guys weren't under-talented. Tatum's a perennial all-star. Right. Jaylen Brown's a perennial. I think Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to become fixtures on the all-star team in coming years.
But perhaps in the way, like if you look back at those Spurs teams from the early 2000s, not realizing that Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili are Hall of Famers in their own right. But they're like, oh, well, all they have is Tim Duncan and a bunch of role players. Yeah. That's probably what we're talking about here with these Celtics, if they keep this group together and they all develop the way it appears they're going to.
Hey, Donald, anything on Tatum before we move on to some other Dukies in the NBA?
Well, I've watched just about every Celtics, almost this entire playoffs, all these games, and what strikes me the most about Jayson Tatum is that you guys talked about it. There was a point where when there's 2 weeks left in the regular season and Kyrie goes out, and they're like, well, Boston's chances of doing anything are completely done because all they have are these guys, and their leader was Kyrie. Their other star was Gordon Hayward, who went down in the first 3 minutes of the season, and they don't have anybody left. And they have a couple of guys who are experienced, role players like Marcus Morris and Aaron Baines and Al Horford, but you don't have anybody who's going to step up and take charge. Jayson Tatum stepped up and took charge, and Jaylen Brown and Scary Terry Rozier and Marcus Smart, those guys are all playing together. And hats off to Brad Stevens, because Brad Stevens has proven that you can take a couple of guys that no one thinks is going to do anything and turn them into something and give them the reins and let them play. And I think that's what the best thing about Jayson Tatum is. For some guys in college, you see them in college and you see them in the pros and you go, how did they make this leap? There was a leap at some point between college and the pros, and they made it, and they are now excellent. But last year, we talked about it a lot, that we saw a lot of NBA game in Jayson Tatum. We saw a lot of that fluidity, and we saw that, and we thought that the transition for him from college to the pros would be less than a lot of good players out there that were leaving after 1 year. And we are now seeing that. And when you see a guy, usually you see a guy hit that wall, as Sam said, after about 30 or so games in the NBA. He didn't have that. And at that point, he ceased to be a rookie, and he became an NBA player and really became a guy that you can count on in the next few years. So I'm really excited to see what he does the rest of these playoffs. I think they have as of right now, they have a great shot at getting to the NBA finals, and he's the star of that. And I think that is what's heartwarming, is that out of all this, he has ceased becoming just rookie, and he has become an NBA star. People are saying those words next to his name and have not mentioned it at all, that this is his first season in the NBA. It took him having to say that after the semifinals, saying, hey, I don't know how to guard LeBron James. I'm just rookie. I'm just here. So we'll play him how we play him. He erased that, inhibition and just erased that fear that a lot of rookies go through in their first year. And he has just become an NBA star. And that's heartwarming to see.
Yeah, I agree. The last thing I'd mention about Tatum is, I think one of the things you look for, especially in young players, is you wonder a little bit, how will they perform under the pressure of the playoffs? The playoffs is a really big deal in the NBA. And if you look at Tatum's numbers in the regular season, he scored about 14 points per game, and about 1.5 assists a game. He had a very, very nice rookie season. Little question that he had, probably the third best rookie season of anybody in the NBA this year, after Donovan Mitchell and Ben Simmons. In the playoffs, he's really stepped it up. I mean, his scoring has gone from just under 14 to over 18 points a game. He's doubled his assists per game. His minutes have picked up a little bit, and he's being more assertive out there on the floor. And like we said, the Celtics are running plays for him. They're putting the ball in his hands in key moments because they know he'll make a smart decision. And his defense has really improved. It's just a great sign for his growth and maturity. I'll comment about one other little thing. We've spoken before, and there's lots of talk about the one and done rule, and whether it makes sense and whether it should be done away with. I think it's going to be done away with fairly soon. And I think all of us kind of agree that there isn't a reason for, these guys who probably are ready or really close to ready to be in the NBA for them to play a year of college ball. The one comment I would make about that, and I agree with that, and that's 100% true, and we've hashed that discussion many times. It's kind of nice that we got a year of Jayson Tatum at Duke and got to know him a little bit at Duke, and as a result can have more appreciation for what he's doing in Boston now. I feel more of a connection to the Boston Celtics as a result of Jayson Tatum being on that team, because I watched him, I enjoyed him, and I loved seeing the way he played basketball at Duke. If he'd just gone directly to the NBA, I'd probably still really appreciate his play. I'd still think he's one of the best young players in the NBA and a future star in the league, but I wouldn't feel the same connection to him. So, one and done, it's going to go away. It probably doesn't belong. It's unfair, and 1,050,000 other things about it that aren't right. But at the same time, that's one thing that I kind of like about it. All right.
Well
and yeah, thank you. I try every now and then. So I mentioned guys lifting their games in the playoffs, guys, who increase their scoring and things like that under the biggest stage. I want to move on to another Dukie in the NBA who I feel like did that as well, and that's JJ Redick, who amazingly to me at the age of 33 had probably his best season this year for the Philadelphia 76ers. You're not supposed to do that when you're 33 years old. And then really I thought there were some bad moments, but for the most part had a very, very good playoffs, lifted his scoring average in the playoffs, averaged more than 18 points a game for the Sixers in the postseason. The Sixers were knocked out by the Celtics, but played very well, and their future as a team looks really, really bright. Donald, I know you paid special attention to what JJ did. God, feels like he's been around the NBA forever, and JJ Redick's been in the NBA for 12 seasons. Do you know how many of those 12 seasons he's been in the playoffs?
1.
How many seasons JJ Redick has been in the playoffs? I'm gonna guess. Yeah. I'm gonna guess 9.
Or I guess 2. No, 2, because he was in 1 year with the Clippers.
Yeah. So wait. So Donald.
Wait, JJ Redick. He played on those Orlando Magic teams that made the finals.
Yeah, Donald. JJ Redick has been in the playoffs. I was gonna guess 9. Hold on. He's been in the playoffs every single season of his career. JJ Redick doesn't know what it's like to play for a team that's in the lottery. JJ Redick's teams always
Wait, that can't be right. He played on the Bucks 1 year.
And they were the 8 seed.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yes, they were.
Stupid Pistons. I remember that year. We should have been the 8 seed. I hate that.
That's right. They traded for him.
They traded for him in the middle of the season. That was when Jason Kidd was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Idiots. I can't believe that.
I was like, Donald's not serious, is he? He made the finals.
Donald said 1.
Yeah.
Donald said 1.
He played on all those Clippers teams. All those Clippers. I mean, by the time he came to the Clippers, they were already good.
Yeah.
And the thought was, if they add another shooter in Redick, because they already had a lot.
They had Paul, they had Blake, they had
and they had
DeAndre. Yeah. They had their core.
They had the core, but they didn't have the shooter. And it was like JJ will be 15 points a game and we'll get them to the finals. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that never really worked out for them. It never seemed like that Clippers team ever fully got to their
15 points
potential.
a game, by the way.
Huh?
By the way, he was 15 points a game. He was really good for them.
Yeah. He was just the guy's like he comes off the bench, he's going to shoot his three.
Yeah, he got the numbers he was expected to. I just never thought that team became as good as I thought, because when they signed him, they were already awesome. Yeah, and I was like, man, the Clippers are going to be so fun now, and I am going to as much as I'll root for any team that isn't my team in the NBA, that was like one of my favorite teams when they were like at their peak, and it never felt like they got to where they could have.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Jason, you were making a point about JJ Redick always making the playoffs.
But I mean, how incredible is that he has always made every single season of his career, he has been in the playoffs. Now, granted, a lot of it, especially those early Orlando years, wasn't really him making the playoffs as much as it was everyone else in the team because he didn't play a ton. But boy, he played really well in the playoffs this year. 18 points a game. He was stellar. And I was going to get all this going by saying, Donald, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about JJ's postseason career or it's the postseason this year. So go for it, Donald.
Yeah. So when he signed with the Sixers in the offseason, he discussed how, over the years, he was very open about how the process, what he thought of it, the Sixers process, Sam Hinkie's process, and how he didn't like it, how he thought that teams should be playing to win and not playing to get draft picks and essentially tanking to get all these players. And then when he signed in the offseason with the Sixers, everybody was like, wait a minute, what happened with all this talk about the process? And he said he, finally realized what it meant to get these young players like Joel Embiid and, Ben Simmons and get these guys in and get them playing and get them gelling to get the process to work. And now that the process, he saw an end goal in sight, he bought into the process. And I think that's what made him play so free this year. He had one of his statistically, if not his statistically best season. He led the team in scoring in the playoffs. He was one of their best shooters all season long. He was the veteran presence on a team that really is very, very young, and their core is going to be around for a long time. And he really earned, and what he did, instead of signing for a couple years or 3 or 4 years, one of his last paydays, he took a 1-year contract. And he did that so that he could really buy in and kind of be free and do this, do this year with the Sixers and really play.
Wait. Hold. Time out a second.
What?
He took a 1-year deal because the Sixers couldn't tie up his salary cap space and offer him more than 1 year. They had a bunch of money. They were able to give him $23 million.
Right, but he turned down multi-year contracts to sign a 1-year deal with the Sixers.
Not for 23.
Not for 23.
He could have made more. He could have made more total value,
right,
signing with other teams.
Yeah.
And he was betting on himself a little bit. I was actually reading this morning about that process and the fact that he's going to go through it again this year and sort of how his calculus changes. I think that there was an argument to be made for him last year that he better go sign the highest value contract he can because he's probably not going to be able to keep this up very much longer. As we said, he's getting old. He's been playing in the NBA for 12 years.
But really quick.
Yeah.
Shooters is something where guys retain their skill for a long time. Look at Kyle Korver, who is still, pretty much the same player he was several years ago.
Or look
Kyle
at
Korver's
Ray
like
Allen
38.
before him.
Right.
Yeah.
Ray Allen was what, nearly 40 when he retired?
He was 40, yeah.
Exactly.
He was 40.
But, yeah.
Continue, yeah.
So,
no, go ahead.
I was going to take it from him and say that JJ, I think that analysis about JJ better go get his money, as much as he can now, because you don't know how long it'll last. Jason, your point is good that shooters stay around a while. I think also we know from following JJ's career probably more closely than most NBA fans do, is that he is one of the hardest workers in the league, and that he has maintained his NBA ability and gotten better through the years because of how hard he's worked. And so we know that him betting on himself is probably a winning bet because he's got all this talent and he's got the motivation to keep being as good as he is. And I wouldn't be surprised if, regardless of where he goes this summer in free agency, if he leaves the Sixers because he decides, that there's a better opportunity for him. I haven't looked at all the cap space and everything. I know the Sixers are trying to go after some bigger name players like LeBron James. Even if JJ Redick leaves after this season, if this Sixers team ends up being a perennial conference finals attendee in the Eastern Conference, I bet you that guys like Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and the rest of this crew is going to look back on this season and look back on JJ's influence on them and think that he was one of the guys that really pushed them to be as great as they are and as great as they're going to be. And you'll hear them praising JJ Redick years down the road if they turn out to be this little dynasty that I think they're capable of being in the East, where there aren't as many of these awesome teams as there are in the West.
Yeah, I mean, they were praising them now. I mean, even, during the regular season when they were winning big games and really people were starting to say, oh, well, the Sixers might be doing something even early in the playoffs. They were saying, JJ is our guy. He's our leader. He's the floor general. He sets the tone. And they've talked a lot about how his veteran presence was something that they sorely needed. They needed someone who goes to the playoffs and has been there and has seen it and knows what to do to get there and knows the hard work you got to put in now to get to the playoffs next year. That sort of, dynamic, bringing that to the team is probably what got the Sixers to become as good as they are so quickly.
And they said that their goal this year was just to make the playoffs, not, necessarily to be like a top 4 seed, not to get through any particular rounds of the playoffs, just to make it, because it's been so long for them. And and the process, quote unquote, has become something of a joke, I think, among NBA fans and NBA commentators. And now with JJ on the team with that veteran presence, it seems like it was like predestined that they were going to make it here. It's like all of a sudden, oh my gosh, they do have all this talent. Now they've figured out how to put it all together. And I think that he deserves a lot of the credit for that.
Yeah, they just made the playoffs. And as soon as they made the playoffs, the way they ran through the first round like that, people are like, I'm sorry, Philly might be the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. Now, granted, the Celtics came and dispatched all that, but it still was a tough series. It wasn't where, they were just getting destroyed or getting mollied. All those games were close, down to the last, few points, few baskets, few defensive stops. This team is going to be a force to be reckoned with over the next couple of years. And I hope that the Sixers really say, you know what, we still need a guy like JJ Redick around, even if we go after LeBron James or some of these other big name stars. I hope we have a chance to keep him, because he is going to be a piece that we will sorely need if we're going to advance and get better throughout the years. But if they don't do that, Detroit Pistons, please.
Okay, here we are.
Just throw some money at him. Couple years. JJ, Detroit's nice, man. I'll show you around. I'll get you some Coney dogs. Just go to Detroit. If the Sixers won't appreciate you, I for one will.
I actually think the $23 million he made this year gives him some flexibility. It would allow him perhaps to stay with the Sixers for less. He made so much more this season. I think probably if he'd signed like a 3-year deal with someone else who'd had cap space, I think probably we'd be looking at like, I don't think he could have gotten more than around $12 million a year or so. Maybe as much as 15, probably not. So probably like a 3-year, 36, 3-year, maybe $40 million. Right, like $3 or $40 million deal. Instead, he signed a 1-year, $23 million deal. I think that means that the Sixers may be able to bring him back, or some other team, some other contender. Because as I mentioned, he plays for playoff teams. I'm sure JJ wants to make a deep playoff run and get a ring before his career is done. And the $23 million he made this year, being overpaid probably by 5, 7, maybe even 10 million this year, means that next year he can maybe take a little bit less and feel comfortable taking a little bit less and stay with a really, maybe the Sixers are able to bring in LeBron James, or there's lots of talk about that. God, he would fit so well next to someone like that. The same way he does right now with Ben Simmons, who draws the D and then dishes to him, and he can do his thing on the perimeter.
I will say this, though. Yeah. I will say this, and this is obviously something that will play out in the next month or so. I highly suspect that JJ Redick is going to be one of the key names, and there's probably a list of like 10 or so, but he's going to be one of those guys whose fate is determined by where LeBron James goes. And I say that because his contract situation is of this, and LeBron may want to keep him, but if LeBron wants to go to Philadelphia, there may be some maneuvering around, and I would assume he would be one of the names on that list to go in the opposite direction. So I would say this. I would say that JJ probably wants to stay in Philadelphia, even if LeBron James comes. But I think where LeBron James goes will determine, and it's not just JJ, it's a bunch of guys, but I think he's one of those guys that if LeBron leaves Cleveland to go to Philadelphia, I would not be surprised if it says JJ Redick is going to Cleveland, because he has that contract number that a team like Cleveland would like, and also that veteran presence that they're going to need going forward. But like you said, he's made the playoffs every single year. He's a veteran presence, and he probably wants to go to a contender situation. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But I as much as it'd be great to see him play next to LeBron James, my heart just says that's not going to happen just because of the numbers.
So let's move on really, really quickly. There are two other Dukies still alive in the playoffs, Rodney Hood and Quinn Cook. Hood playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Quinn Cook playing for the Golden State Warriors, the loaded Golden State Warriors. Quinn is not playing very much. He was a key player for them down the stretch when Curry was hurt, when Steph Curry was hurt. Quinn was starting, and that's how he earned his contract, and we spoke a lot about that. But as the playoffs have moved on, Quinn's role has lessened and lessened and lessened. Rodney Hood, to me, is sort of the more interesting story, because LeBron James, that Cleveland team, desperately needs help for LeBron. And Rodney Hood, you sort of thought might be a guy, especially with his perimeter skills, the way LeBron draws the defense. You thought that Hood might be a guy who could really do something for Cleveland. And boy, has he been disappointing, culminating in the final game of the Toronto series. Cleveland is blowing Toronto out. It's about to be a 4-game sweep. Hood had played terrible in that Toronto series, had seen his time dwindle and dwindle. He had scored a total of 2 points in the first 3 games of the series, not a 2-point average, 2 points total in the first 3 games. He wasn't shooting well. Like I said, his minutes were dwindling. And in game 4, he hadn't played at all. And Tyronn Lue, the Cleveland coach, came over to put in his scrubs. He essentially came over to put in, 5 guys who hadn't played. And he said to Rodney Hood, "Hey, Rodney, why don't you go in?" And Hood said, "Nah, I'm good. I don't need to play right now." And there was a good bit of controversy about this, because apparently some of the veterans on the team said, "Rodney, you can't be doing that. That's not good. You're you're being paid to be a part of the team to play in games." And Rodney sort of refused to go in.
Jason,
yeah, go ahead.
I saw this story. I didn't really understand like how it all like got concluded, because I can't believe that Rodney Hood was so, like, I don't know, despondent or disengaged from the game that he was just like, nah, don't put. Was that the actual explanation, or was there more to it?
Well, it was more like, so when they got him in the trade, and the deadline trade where they just red wedding the entire Cavaliers roster and sent them elsewhere and had these new guys in.
Nice Game of Thrones. Nice Game of Thrones reference.
I haven't even seen that.
Coming back in spring of 2019.
Yeah. When that happened, they brought him in to be not just a starter, but also their 3-and-D guy. And he was kind of to provide heavy minutes in the starting lineup in this revamped roster. So I'm sure in his mind, being sent in in the last 5 minutes of a game 4 where they're up 30 points to the Raptors was probably viewed as an insult, because it was, garbage time.
But the dude hasn't played well.
The dude hasn't played well, but it's still again, in the NBA, everyone thinks they're an all-star. Everyone thinks they're the man, because they have been used to being the man their entire life, and from on all levels. So when you're at that point, it sounded like he was just like, nah, dog, don't put me in. I'm not the guy. Like, put in homeboy down here that hasn't played. And it got, the team was like, hey man, we're in the middle of a championship run. You can't be doing this. It all got squashed very soon after. Everybody apologized, or Hood apologized. Everybody was cool. He's back in the rotation. But yeah, for a good 24, 48 hours, it was not a good look for Rodney Hood to be, they were talking about how Cleveland had just swept the Raptors, and lost in all that was all lost in the sense that they're talking about Rodney Hood not checking into a game in the fourth quarter when they're up 30 points. So it wasn't a good look, but I think it's all behind them now. He has not played well throughout this entire playoffs. And this next round, he hasn't played well yet either against the Celtics. But then again, no one on the Celtics has.
Well, I was going to say in game one for Cleveland, he had 11 points, which, believe it or not, he was their third leading scorer in game one. Now, a lot of that came at garbage time.
Yeah, I was going to say he was his plus minus still wasn't good.
Well, also, like, LeBron, didn't he have 40 that game? So
No. That was the game LeBron had 15.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he had 40 in the second game, and they still lost.
Right. So, I mean, look, Rodney Hood was, he was getting mid-20s minutes per game in the regular season for Cleveland. And in the against Indiana, it was down to 18. Against Toronto, he was down to 13. And it's the same. It's low teens again so far for this Boston series. It's clear that his role is diminishing, and he's not really comfortable with it. But on the other hand, has not. He's been awful. He's been awful in the playoffs.
If I want to go back to Quinn Cook real quickly, you were talking about how he's not getting that much playing time, and honestly, I don't expect him to get that much playing time the rest of the way. And it's not because of what he has done in the playoffs or anything like that. He's been very serviceable when he's in the game. I think the issue is that the Golden State Warriors are playing the Houston Rockets, and this is the matchup that everybody in the NBA has been waiting for all season. We are going to see the stars in this. This is going to be the Hamptons 5. There's going to be James Harden. There's going to be Chris Paul, Clint Capella. Those guys are going to be playing. And Trevor Ariza, they're going to be playing. There's not going to be a lot of garbage time in this series. There's not going to be a lot of times where the second and third units are going to get a lot of playing time. This is about the stars, and unfortunately, that means less time for Quinn Cook. Now, he has played quite a bit for, he's usually on that second unit, or your 2B unit for the Warriors during the series. But his minutes are going to go down. It's not based on his play. He has been good, and everyone around the Golden State Warriors loves Quinn Cook and knows that he is an integral part of that bench unit for the next couple of years. So I wouldn't put too much stock, those of you out there, into saying, oh, I haven't seen Quinn Cook play a lot. He must not be doing great. He's doing just fine. It's just that this is the Golden State Warriors versus the Houston Rockets. This is essentially the finals, and you are going to see a lot of players that and very little of the players that you don't in this series. And that, unfortunately, puts Quinn Cook on the other side.
And we've talked a lot about Quinn Cook here the last couple months because of how well he played in the G League and his eventual promotion to the Warriors and his signing of the 2-year contract right at the end of the season. I don't think any of us expected that he was going to be playing major minutes here at the end of the playoffs. But the Warriors wanted him around next year as a backup to Steph, who often suffers from injury problems. And I think that we should just be happy that he's getting any minutes at all for arguably the best team in basketball.
Yeah, he's earned himself. I mean, if the Warriors end up going on to win this thing, Quinn Cook's getting a ring. He's played enough games to get a ring. He's been is not one of those guys where like, hey man, like Darko Milicic when he won with the Pistons, he played like 12 games. He was literally nicknamed the human victory cigar. Quinn is no victory cigar. Quinn is a guy who's going to be playing, and basically while these guys get rest with Steph and Iguodala and even Livingston, when those guys are resting on the bench, Quinn Cook's going to be in there, and he's going to be playing just as well as he has been playing the last couple of months. So I'm still looking forward to it, and hopefully, if there's some garbage time, is going to be shocking. But I don't expect to see him play much going forward, and that's not a bad thing.
So let's wrap up the playoff conversation, but I want to add one quick thing. Donald said, "Oh, this Warriors Rockets thing is for the title," and that's the conventional wisdom, and everyone seems to think that the winner of that is going to stomp whoever comes out of the East, probably Boston. I just want to put this out there. Everyone sort of thought Boston was dead even before the playoffs began. There were a lot of questions whether they would even beat Milwaukee. That series went 7 games. everyone was picking Philadelphia to beat Boston. Philadelphia had looked really impressive in their first round. Boston, defeated them in 5. I mean, everyone was picking Cleveland, who had just swept Toronto, to beat Boston. We now have Boston up 2-0 on Cleveland. It's real easy to say, oh, of course, the winner of the Warriors-Rockets series is going to win. These Celtics, I don't know. There seems to be something special going on, and Brad Stevens is putting himself in a real conversation as one of the best basketball minds anywhere on the planet. College, pro, European, you name it. He seems to be able to pull make the right moves and push the right buttons and get his team doing just what he wants them to do. I think they will end up beating Cleveland, and I think they may surprise some people. I'm not saying they're going to win, but they may surprise some people against the winner of the Houston Warriors series. Anyway, we'll see. I want to move on to something different. But it's still about the NBA. I want to quickly talk about Dukies in the NBA draft, because specifically the NBA Combine has been going on over the past several days, and there have been some real eye-popping results going on. Probably the most surprising of all of them is Grayson Allen. Now, people, just so you understand what happens at the NBA Combine, a bunch of guys get invited. Basically, everyone who has a shot at being a first or second rounder, for the most part, gets invited to the NBA Combine. Not everyone accepts the invite. For example, Marvin Bagley didn't accept. He didn't go. He's not being measured. No, nothing. He just didn't even show up because teams know enough about him. And the only thing that can happen if you show up and do this stuff, if you're a top pick, is potentially something bad can happen. Your stock can hurt. So the guys who show up, the guys who play, the guys who get measured, the guys who do the athletic drills and the such, tend to be guys who probably aren't quite in the lottery, looking to maybe move themselves up. A lot of second round, late first, early second round guys trying to move into the first round. The guy who's probably been the most surprising among the Dukies is Grayson Allen. He didn't participate in the scrimmages, but he did get measured. He did the athletic testing, and his athletic testing was like off the charts. His vertical leap and his standing vertical were among the best of anyone at the Combine. There's this lane agility drill where you show your quickness and your speed in the lane, and he recorded the fastest time of anyone at the Combine on this lane agility drill. And I think he recorded like the 4th or 5th fastest time ever in the Combine's history. Athleticism had maybe been seen as a little bit of one of Grayson Allen's weaknesses. Now it's not a weakness at all. And people are talking.
Jason, can I interrupt you on that?
Go.
I think if you're a general basketball observer and you said that Grayson Allen's athleticism is playing against him, it's probably just because you're a standard racist basketball fan. If you're a Duke fan and you've been watching Grayson Allen for 4 years and you think that he lacks athleticism,
I agree.
I don't know what team listen, Grayson Allen's got a lot of issues, right? We know that. He's had all kinds of problems on the court, be it his health or his temper, or whatever you want to call all the issues surrounding Grayson Allen. Being able to get in the lane and get up and dunk has never been a problem for him. It wasn't a problem for him when he was 16. It's not a problem for him at 22. And it doesn't surprise me that we get to the Combine and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Grayson Allen's a great athlete. Mm-hmm. Duh. Come on now.
Well, that's the thing. like you said, we've been talking about this for years. So the surprise is not coming from Duke circles.
That's not us.
It's not us.
Yeah.
It's everyone else who's been like, yo, Grayson Allen's a piece of trash. I hate him. He trips people all the time. Wait, he's athletic? Oh, he's actually pretty good.
Oh, he can get in the lane and make moves?
He could jump. He's very quick on agility. Wow. I had no idea. I just been talking about him because I hate him.
I mean,
this is the haters finally realizing that, they're hating on someone.
We didn't even talk about this a couple months ago because, I think we assume that among the three of us and among the people who listen to the show, we know that Grayson Allen is athletic. We don't have to talk about that. Mm-hmm. We don't have to address the dumb basketball fans
but we did though.
I mean, we did.
There'd be times where he'd yam when people were like, "Yo, Grayson Allen, we knew he was athletic." But
yeah, we know he has that. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that he's doing well. And Jason, you haven't talked about Duval or Trent also participating in the combine and being.
I was just about to get to them.
And being right there with him. Why don't you give us the rundown, and then I'll give you the exact same reaction, which is, duh. We know how athletic they are. Tell us about them.
Well, Gary Trent. So Trevon Duval. He had the second best standing vertical of anyone at the combine. I mean,
again, not shocked at all. Yeah. Did you like? I understand this year that he lost the ball at inopportune times often, but in the times when he was able to get to the lane, he got up.
So, you remember that UNC game?
Yeah.
Remember that game?
My God, yeah.
My goodness.
But Trevon Duval did not play in the scrimmages. Like, he showed off his athletic gifts. He showed off his athleticism,
which makes perfect sense because he's not a lottery pick type basketball player yet. He just has the athleticism, so he might as well just go to the athleticism drills and say, well, look at how fast and how fast I can run and how high I can jump and how quickly I can change directions. Those are all the things that are going to get him as high as he's going to go in the draft.
Right. Playing may actually lessen that. And really, like you said, the combine's for people who want to go and say, this is why you should draft me. So for some guys, they need to play because look, I'm not going to test off the charts, but when you see me play, you're gonna be wowed. Some guys are gonna be like, you don't need to see me play. You just need to see me jump, hit the 50-inch vertical thing, and then I'm gonna go about my business, and you can watch everybody else play.
Duval is like the probably of all the players that have been at Duke in recent history, Duval's probably the most prototypical, projection player as opposed to now player, right? We saw him this year, and every game there were one or two plays where we thought, man, if he could do that all the time, he's going to be an all-star. But the majority of his plays were, gosh, Duval again, like losing the ball in the lane, throwing it out of bounds to nobody.
But those are things that
missing assignments.
Those are things that teams believe they can teach or get you out of.
He's young.
He's young. You can develop that, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be like someone's going to say, okay, look, there's at one point he had like a 5-to-1 assist turnover ratio. And then that obviously went down a little bit. But, at the same time, someone can say, you know what? I can get him out of that habit of throwing the ball away. We can teach him how to do that. We can't teach leaping ability. We can't teach speed. You can't teach height. That's what people are looking for this combine. And I think it's actually a smart move by Duval to go and say, here are my athleticism numbers. You guys can stew over that all you wish. I await your call. And again, the Pistons brought him in yesterday based on that. So, hey, Pistons, I'm just saying, we won't have a first round pick, but second round, if he's there.
And most people are saying that Trevon Duval, by not playing in the scrimmages and the such, they're and sort of indicating that, gameplay is still something he needs to work on. Most people are saying that Duval is going to be a second rounder, not going to be a first rounder. But Gary Trent did play in the scrimmages. He had 22 in one of the scrimmages on just, I think it was like 7 shots or 9 shots. Really, really efficient. He turned heads, was playing really well. And Trent, who was a guy who's sort of known as, a shooter, not necessarily an athlete, even though he is a good athlete, his athletic scores, his vertical leap and things like that were also really, really strong, among the best of anyone who tested there. So there are a lot of folks saying that as a result of Trent playing really well in the scrimmages, showing he's a better athlete maybe than some folks had expected, that Gary Trent has played his way at the combine into being a first rounder. Most folks are now saying that he's probably going to go like in the 20s, sort of mid to late first round. So good for him. And I also wanted to point out
a great situation, like a playoff contending or a championship contending team where he, as we talked about with JJ, could be the final piece, the shooter or who can, be also athletic. That kind of play, doing something where you're talking about people being, early second round. If you play yourself into the late first round, that means you're playing yourself into a much better team and probably a much better situation.
So the other thing about Gary Trent was there was a really interesting quote from him about Wendell Carter. Did you all see what he said about Wendell Carter?
No, but I want to hear.
Go ahead.
So Gary Trent, part of what happens at the combine is everybody gets interviewed. and they asked Gary Trent about Wendell Carter, and he said, I'm going to tell you all something. If Marvin Bagley hadn't been at Duke this year, Wendell Carter would absolutely be in the conversation for the number 1 pick in the draft. Yeah, we saw how well Carter played in the few games that Bagley missed. There's a lot of talk about Carter, maybe even sneaking up as high as like 6 or 7 in the lottery. I think someone's going to get a steal, when they pick up Wendell Carter. I know that there are a lot of Chicago folks. Chicago's picking number 7. There are a lot of people in Chicago who think they're going to nab Carter at number 7 if he's still there, and put him alongside Larry Markkinen, and form a really, really solid front line. A lot of talk about Wendell Carter, even though he wasn't even at, he wasn't playing at the combine. He didn't do any of the athletic drills. He just got measured. He stuck out his arms and he stepped on a scale and things like that. He got measured.
I can confirm that Wendell Carter is in fact a very large human being.
Thank you. Way to go.
I know that much about him. And yeah, I will not be surprised if he's one of the, he may not have the 3rd or 4th best career of anybody in this draft, but in terms of immediate impact, he seems like about as good of a bet as you can get from a big man who isn't, the most star athlete like Marvin Bagley or DeAndre Ayton.
And you were mentioning Chicago. If Chicago somehow passes on him, I doubt he gets past the Knicks. With David Fizdale now the coach, that's the type of big man that he usually prefers. So if he's not going to go to Chicago and he falls a couple more spots, he might be a Knickerbocker by the end of the night,
and would pair very well with Kristaps Porzingis.
Boom.
Oh yeah, 2 guys who can stretch the floor and long and protect the rim and stuff. Yeah, that'd be. I mean, the Knicks I think would love if he's there at 9. They'd be very, very happy. Guys, I wanted to mention lightning fast 2 other very, very quick things from the combine that affect the ACC, not necessarily Duke. Georgia Tech's Josh Okogie was at the combine. Did really, really well in the athletic measurement stuff. I mean, blew the doors off some of the athletic stuff. And most people are now saying he also played well in the scrimmages. Most folks are now saying that Josh Okogie looks like he's played his way into being, if not a first rounder, an early second rounder, and that he will stay in the draft. If he had, there was most of the speculation was he probably was going to come back to Georgia Tech. That's sort of shifted now. And I think he would have been, absolutely a huge key piece for Georgia Tech. He was their best offensive player by far last year. They were tremendously offensively challenged. If Tech was going to have any hope of moving sort of out of the ACC cellar, it was going to be on the back of Josh Okogie, and it looks like they're now not going to get that chance because he's going to be gone. And then the other one, which I think probably is even more significant, Tyus Battle of Syracuse, played quite poorly. He did not have a good combine. He didn't score well in any of the athletic stuff. He didn't play well in the scrimmage. He just didn't stand out at all. And so it's looking like back to Syracuse, will return to Syracuse. He was their best offensive player, and having him back with some of the other pieces that they add after, Syracuse had a really nice run in the NCAA tournament, as we well know. Getting Tyus Battle back probably put Syracuse in the conversation, top 3, top 4 in the ACC, top 15, top 20 nationally, perhaps. So a big deal for them, not confirmed yet. We don't know any of this stuff yet, but it looks like Tyus Battle probably didn't do well enough at the combine to go into the NBA. Once again, the DBR Podcast wants to thank our sponsor, the guys from Byrd Campbell. They are a law firm founded by 2 former Duke roommates. They have offices in Texas and Florida. And if you have legal needs in those places, we urge you, please reach out to these guys. They are good guys. You can find them on the web at byrdcampbell.com, BYRDCAMPBELL.com. And if nothing else, reach out to them and tell them, go to hell, Carolina, go to hell. Guys, we got a little more news we want to do, and this connects directly to next year's Duke basketball team. Joey Baker, a 5-star recruit, one of the top players in the class of 2019, said, wait, I am not in the class of 2019 anymore. I'm in the class of 2018. Joey Baker, who is coming to Duke, joins the already impressive 2018 Duke freshman class. We can now call it the Fab Five, I guess, or something like that, or the Five Musketeers, because Baker is now the fifth recruit who's a part of that class. Sam, I'll go to you first. Do you think, there's some question? Joey Baker is a fine player, a really good, he's a wing and a good outside shooter. You think Joey Baker gets much playing time for Duke next year? There's talk that he may merely be coming to sort of redshirt for a year.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, although in the final 247 Sports composite ranking, he is ranked as the 31st best player in this class, which generally indicates that, yeah, he should be playing his freshman season, even if he's at a program like Duke. That being said, like you said, Jason, he's like a bigger wing. And we've been talking about this recruiting class the whole time about how they have too many bigger wings. They already have Cam Reddish and RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson, who aren't all the same player, right? They all have different best aspects of their game. And Joey Baker, I think, is expected to be a little bit more of a shooter than those guys are. But that being said, it's not like he has a clear path to lots of minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised if he redshirts this year, although it wouldn't be sort of expected given his recruiting ranking. And I know that Coach K in the past has lamented not specifically redshirting certain guys because of the way that their developments turned out.
Ryan Kelly.
Yeah, I think Ryan Kelly being the best example. Ryan Kelly, not exactly the same type of player. Joey Baker's more of a wing. Ryan Kelly was obviously a big man who could go out and shoot threes, but who wasn't really physically there in the 2010 season to contribute. He only played a few minutes a game, and Duke really could have used him rather than in 2010 as a freshman. They could have used him in 2014 as a super senior. Joey Baker might be too talented to keep on the bench. He might be a guy who has NBA aspirations earlier than the end of his senior season. So what's the point then of keeping him on the bench? But yeah, I can see Coach K deciding, look, we're loaded at this area. What I'm curious about is how the conversation goes down when you are Joey Baker, who is already, he's going to be a top player in the class of 2019. He knows that the Duke team in the 19 season is crowded at his position, and he still decides, I'm going to come early. I think that usually when these players decide to skip ahead of class, be it going all the way back to Andre Dawkins, Derek Thornton in more recent years, it's because Duke has a specific need at their position. That wasn't the case here for Joey Baker. So I am curious how that all went down. Not that we'll ever find out until many years after, and it's not relevant anymore. But yeah, we'll see. I'm curious, and I'll be excited for him either way.
Yeah, and you were talking about the conversation that they probably had. It sounded like from when Joey Baker was speaking that they were just talking about his overall game development, and he came to the decision that even with this loaded class at his position, that he would have a better chance of developing greater, accelerating his status to become 2018 instead of waiting one more year in high school and then coming. So I wonder if it's, the chance to kind of be in practice and learning from, Coach K, and also just competing every day against, the top three players in the country that all play a similar position to him might have, factored into that. But it is a curious one where you say, hey, you're probably going to come in redshirt, reclassify, come to Duke early, and then redshirt. That's not something that you see often. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that develops. But at the same time, if you're good, you're good. And if you have the tools to play, Coach K is going to get you on the floor. So if he comes ready to play and develop, we may see him on the court next year.
I don't know. Skipping the high school All-American circuit doesn't sound like something that I would want to do, because it seems like it's a lot of fun. But yeah, if you think this is going to be better for you, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but I mean, Donald hit on it. It's about development as a player. It's about making yourself better. I mean, Joey Baker was not a guy who was a lock to someday be in the NBA, and he may say to himself, if I want to reach the NBA, the best way to do it is to get an extra year of practice from Coach K and the Duke coaching staff with their facilities, with all the advanced stuff they have that they're able to teach me, and practicing against RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish against guys who are future NBA lottery picks is going to be better for me than dominating another year of high school. I think it's a very intelligent decision on his part. I do think he's, if not redshirting, he's going to play a fairly small role, because I think he will play the same kind of role. He could play the same kind of role as Alex O'Connell, and O'Connell's already been there a year. O'Connell already showed us a lot of what he can do, and he performed quite well. Arguably the best outside shooter on Duke's team last year. I don't really see Baker leaping ahead of a more experienced, already proven Alex O'Connell in the rotation. The last thing I'll add is I really like the fact that Joey Baker isn't a kid who's all about himself and all about his playing time and that kind of thing. He wants to come get better by playing against better players. And I really admire that. And I think it speaks to what kind of teammate he will be and what kind of development you will see from him, and speaks to it in the best kind of ways. I love it. And we'll get more of a chance to get to know him, as opposed to these guys that we only very, very briefly get to know.
Maybe Joey Baker, on a totally different tangent, maybe he has already fulfilled the maximum number of AP credits that the Trinity College of Arts and Sciences will let you transfer from high school, and he just wants to get on with his academic career. Maybe not.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it.
Listen, if we're widely speculating, maybe he's just a stellar scholar athlete, and
maybe he likes chemistry.
Yeah. I wouldn't accelerate my high school career to get to go take college chemistry. I heard that was pretty hard.
Yeah.
But that could be his bag. All right, let's move on.
Time for parting shots. Donald, I will go to you first. I know what your parting shot is, and it's going to be a fun one.
Oh, it is. Okay, guys, we're going to go back to Detroit. We're going back to my Detroit Pistons, and they're actually doing something smart. They're bringing in to interview one of our very own, my hometown hero, comes from my high school, went to my college, and now could play or could be in the front office for my team. Yes, our daddy, Shane Battier. Shane Battier is right now recently, he's been with the Miami Heat. He is the director of player development and analytics. And if that sounds like a made-up position, it very much is, because they literally created the position to keep him in the organization after he retired. So he is now leaving, or not leaving, but he's interviewing with the Detroit Pistons for a spot in their revamped front office after they fired Stan Van Gundy. Look, Detroit Pistons, I'm telling you, there is, and really this is for any team out there, there is no better person who has the tools to progress in his career as an NBA executive, and B, bring something to the table right now than Shane Battier.
Donald, I thought you were going to say, you were just going to stop at, there is no better person than Shane Battier.
I mean, look, I was trying to draw it out a little bit more, but yes, I could have stopped there.
You had way too many qualifiers in there.
It doesn't even qualify.
By the way, hey, Donald.
Yeah.
Shane is a Detroit boy, right?
He went to Detroit Country Day High School. Shout out my high school. He was the first person I met in high school was Shane Battier. The first person I got to see when I went to Duke University was Shane Battier. This guy, he has not played for a Pistons organization. He's been with the Heat. He's been with the Houston Rockets. He's been with Memphis Grizzlies. This would be a homecoming of sorts, and people say of sorts because, again, he did not play for the Pistons. But
nor did he go to Michigan.
Nor did he go to Michigan. He went to Duke, but he played. He grew up in Michigan. He went to Detroit Country Day. He won 3 state championships there. He has won on all levels. Bring this man home. Let this man help bring back the old Detroit Pistons that we know and love. He would be a great guy to really deal with the player development, the analytics, and even more so, player decisions and personnel decisions. You want a guy like that in your front office. And if the Detroit Pistons are smart, they would hire him. So hopefully that makes sense. Shane, friend of the podcast. Hopefully I can say finally Shane Battier of the Detroit Pistons, friend of the podcast.
All right. So my parting shot, ordinarily I'm the host this week, would do their parting shot last. I'm going to inject my parting shot here. Sam, we will wait on yours for just a moment because my parting shot dovetails perfectly off of Donald's parting shot. Donald was talking about the Pistons' search for a new head of their front office. I want to talk very quickly about the Pistons' search for their new head coach, because the Pistons are considering Becky Hammon, the assistant coach of the San Antonio Spurs. She is one of the contenders for the Pistons head coaching job. Becky Hammon had been among the contenders for the Milwaukee Bucks head coaching job. They went a different direction. They didn't pick her. But you all Becky Hammon, of course, is in the news, and it's news when she's up for a coaching job because, as you can tell by the name Becky, she is a female. She is a woman. She's not a man. And everyone's sort of waiting and expecting that at some point she will break the gender barrier and become the first female head coach in the NBA. Guys, did you all read what Pau Gasol, who's a member of the San Antonio Spurs and has known Becky Hammon for several years, did you read what Pau Gasol said about Becky Hammon?
I believe the quote was something like, "She's just a great basketball coach," and that was all he said. I mean, there was more discussion at least in the article that I read, but the summary was, "She's just a great basketball coach," and
full stop.
And if Pau Gasol and the San Antonio Spurs think it, then everyone should think it, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to read. There's a paragraph from Pau Gasol's article that he wrote in the Players Tribune that I thought was just so beautifully done, and I just wanted to read it for folks so they were aware of it. Pau Gasol says about Becky Hammon, he says, "I've been in the NBA for 17 years. I've won 2 championships. I've played with some of the best players of this generation, and I've played under 2 of the best sharp courts, Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich." I think we would all agree Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich know how to coach NBA basketball. Pau Gasol says, "I'm telling you, Becky Hammon can coach. I'm not saying she can coach pretty well. I'm not saying she can coach enough to get by. I'm not saying she can coach almost at the level of an NBA male coach. I'm saying Becky Hammon can coach NBA basketball, period." I think that's just a great statement by Pau Gasol. And I love, there was one other part of Pau Gasol's article that I thought was really interesting to me. Pau pointed out that his mother and father were a doctor and a nurse, but it was his mother who was the doctor and it was his father who was a nurse. And that it never sort of occurred to him that there were gender roles associated with those two professions. Most of us think of a doctor, we think of a man. Most of us think of a nurse, we think of a woman, because we brought up with certain gender roles in society. And Pau said, he's like, no, for me, jobs and gender roles weren't something that you sort of fixed on. And so he said, Becky Hammon deserves to be an NBA head coach, and she's under consideration for the Pistons. I think it's sort of interesting. Donald, I'm guessing the Pistons will try to hire their GM before they hire their head coach, but it'd be really interesting. I'd love if Shane Battier and Becky Hammon are there. I will instantly become an even bigger Pistons fan than I already am.
I'd love this. There's talk. I mean, everyone talks about who they would want in a coach or GM for the Pistons. And just on the coach's side, I know there's a lot of talk about people wanting the Pistons to just drive down the 401 to Toronto and pick up Dwayne Casey. I would love that too. But having Becky Hammon as the head coach, I would be all in favor of that. As Sam put it, that Powell said, she is a basketball coach, period. That and she is a great one. And will be a great one. So I would love to see this, and hopefully it happens.
All right, time for the last parting shot, and for that we go to Sam Klein.
So only because we didn't get to talk to it at length today, I think that we ended up with, we were sort of waiting for enough topics to appear, and then all of a sudden we had too many topics because of all the NBA stuff going on. But the Supreme Court ruling from, I think it was earlier this week, that allows states to make their own laws regarding sports gambling. There was some confusion about it that said that the Supreme Court was legalizing sports gambling. That wasn't the case. It was just saying that the federal government doesn't have the authority to stop states from doing that. There are a lot of repercussions that are going to come out from this. We know that New Jersey's already instituted sports gambling, or is in the process of putting the infrastructure together. We know that a number of other states have either passed legislation or looking at passing legislation. Don't be surprised in the next couple of years if most states in the United States have some kind of legal sports gambling going on. I think it's going to be fun for us to talk about going forward, mostly because we have at least one gambling addict, Jason Evans, who helps host this program. So we're going to be getting all kinds of bad beat coverage from him. But there's going to be a lot of discussion among the leagues and the NCAA about how to, if you want to be cynical, how to get their cut of the whole thing, or really how to regulate it and make sure that everything is above board and that there's no point shaving or any of that stuff going on now that it's going to be more out in the open than it's been the last however many decades or really forever. So I think it's going to be an interesting change to the sporting landscape, and I know we're going to talk more about it because we have that kind of interest. Hopefully our listeners appreciate that sort of thing, but get ready for a lot more discussion of legalized sports gambling, and check in with your local governments to see what they are doing about it. Because who knows, you might have a sports book in your favorite sports bar down the street sooner than you think.
It's a big deal. And it's to me, I think it's going to change sports in America. There's going to be a awareness of betting lines and things like that. And this is going to enhance that significantly. And I agree with you. You're going to see, my bet is you'll see maybe a half dozen states over the next month and a half, 2 months will have sports gambling in place. And it'll take a little bit longer for some of the other ones because there's all this reluctance, especially in some states that are a little more conservative. There's some reluctance, that gambling is a sin or something like that. But look, we've seen the lottery spread all over the country for the most part. I won't be at all surprised if by the time we hit next year's NCAA tournament, next March, less than a year from now, my bet is we'll have 20 states that will allow you to legally bet on the NCAA tournament.
And there are midterm elections coming up in 6 months. You will see candidates put this on their platforms that they want to get this done and instituted as quickly as possible.
There's going to be one thing that falls by the wayside, though. Whenever you see a sporting event and something happens late in the game that changes the line or changes, from cover to under the spread, the term folks in Vegas are going to be upset about this or very happy about this is going to go by the wayside because it's not going to be just Vegas anymore that has to deal with that.
And by the way, I'll tell you one other thing that it potentially does, specifically for the NCAA. It makes it even more important for the NCAA to figure out a way to begin to compensate the basketball players, and probably the football players also, because as gambling becomes more and more prevalent, and as it spreads, and as there is more and more legal gambling, there's going to be more incentive for unscrupulous folks to try to impact the result of games. And it's when you have players who are paid nothing, as NCAA basketball and football players are, the notion of, hey, if I give you $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, will you help shave some points for me or something like that, or you just give me some info on the team. Hey, is this guy really hurt? Is this guy really going to play? Give me some info that'll give me a leg up. $1,000 or a couple $1,000 carries a lot more weight than it does for a pro team. If you approach an NBA player and say, "Hey, I'll give you $1,000 to do something," they'll be like, $1,000? I made that in the 30 seconds that I talked to you. Because these guys make millions of dollars. So I think the NCAA really needs to figure out a way, to prevent, corruption from gambling from coming into the sport, but B, the way to do that is to disincentivize the players a little bit by actually providing them with some kind of compensation. And I hope this advances. I hope, everything that's gone. Is it just me? Does it feel like everything that's happened in the past year or so has continued to push us toward compensating the players? I mean, the Adidas scandal, the commission, which sort of punted on that issue, but so many people criticized them for not advocating it. And now we have gambling coming into the sport. everything is pushing us toward finding some way to get more money in the pockets of these players to allow them to realize what they are worth in a true, honest kind of fashion. Because as we said, it was almost a year ago on this podcast when the Adidas scandal first broke out. When there is no real economy, an underground economy will fill in the blank. And we need to stop that underground economy from being the only way these guys can get money. So that's going to do it for us here on the DBR podcast. Sam and Donald sitting next to each other, nice and cuddly. Were you guys touching the whole time?
Not quite, but we're enjoying each other's company.
I have a couch. I don't have a love seat.
So Sam and Donald sitting next to each other in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for joining me. I am Jason Evans in Atlanta, Georgia. That's it for episode 119 of the DBR podcast. Folks, we remind you, if you are out there, if you're listening to us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, wherever it may be, please give us a 5-star rating. And if you don't love the podcast, send us an email. Write to us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com. dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your questions. We'll answer them here on the podcast. Send us any concerns you may have, and we will happily address them. And if you want to be a sponsor, like the fine guys of Byrd Campbell, who sponsor us every week, feel free to reach out to us about that as well. We can always use more sponsors. We will happily get your message out there to the many, many Duke fans who are listening to us. For Sam and Donald, I am Jason. This is episode 119. We'll be back probably after the NBA draft or after the NBA playoffs, sometime in there. Until then, Duke Band, it's your turn. Take us home.